We all have a basic strength here and a basic weakness here. We all do in some parts of our body. Well, I actually tried bodybuilding first because, of course, I watched Pumping Iron.
Of course.
And then, you know, I saw Kaz on TV compete in powerlifting. And I was like, well, you could be that big and that strong and look like a monster. But I feel where I could feel the strongest and the most locked in.
I know we have Ed Coan's here. Look at that. That's perfect timing.
Well, fuck, let's do it after. We'll do it live.
Whatever you want.
What's going on?
Ed Coan, what's up?
How are you guys doing?
Doing great, man. Thanks for joining us. I hope it wasn't too much of a mix up earlier. Apologize for any
Oh,
confusion
no,
with
don't
that.
worry about it. I'm not exactly tech savvy, so don't worry about it.
Neither are we. We're learning, but anytime someone younger than us comes on, we get made fun of. We actually have, when we did a live stream on YouTube, and apparently the kids made a drinking game out of me saying dumb tech things, or I don't even know.
Well, yeah, we turned on the recording, but you know, I can edit some things and all that fun stuff, but we'll kind of jump in and roll. So yeah, everybody who is watching this and listening into the audio version, we have the GOAT himself, Mr. Ed Coan. Thanks so much for joining us today. I know Justin and I have been wanting to connect with you for some time. We're just, you know, been huge fans of all your accomplishments and things, and so we're pumped to have you on. So really appreciate you jumping on and joining us.
Thanks. You guys do a great job, so I'm happy to be here.
Yeah,
awesome,
nice. You're like our dream guest. I think I told you one time I actually got in a fight with my roommate in college. The Mountaineer Cup 2000 was on ESPN, and I can't remember what he had to do, something for school or watch some video. This was before, you know, we had computers and everything, so it must have been something he had to watch, and I refused to turn the Mountaineer Cup off, and we got in a fight over it. But of course I was bigger than him, so I won, and I got to watch it.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I think jumping into it, I mean, obviously I know, you know, Justin's been following your stuff from like the, you know, really, really early days. I mean, I just think for viewers out there too, like how did you get started in powerlifting, and what kind of led you into you know, into this wonderful world that you find yourself in now?
Well, I actually tried bodybuilding first because, of course, I watched Pumping Iron.
Of course.
And I even went in a contest. It was the Central USA. I took like 9th in my class as a teenager, like at 15, or I had just turned 16. This is before they even posed the music.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
Yeah, and I took Franco Colombo's poses out of his book in sequence from the back of his book, and I did those on stage. That was my routine.
Nice.
And then, you know, I saw Kaz on TV compete in powerlifting, and I was like, well, you could be that big and that strong and look like a monster. I want to try this. And it was just like a duck to water.
Yeah.
I jumped in, and it was just great.
I always loved your approach because it was calm and collected, and it seemed logical, and you were like, it was all, I don't know the word, I don't want to say mechanical, but you know, it was precise. Yeah. And I love that because, you know, every time I trained with powerlifters, it was always death metal music and screaming, and that was never me, and I could never do that. And I always felt like that just wasted energy before the
lift. It makes you lose your focus too.
Yep. Yeah.
I think a lot of times people do a lot of that to try to break negative thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of being confident and knowing what you're supposed to do and be ready to do it, you have to create all this other shit to try to fool yourself into some type of a positive effect. And I don't think it really ever works.
Yeah, it never did for me. You know, it always felt like I just, like you said, lost my focus. That I needed to be into myself, in my head, thinking about the movement, not like letting it all out, screaming to the room. That, to me, that felt like I was giving everything away to everyone else.
You lose control.
Yeah.
Right.
Both mind and body.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of breakdowns in the, you know, especially like some of the weight, right? Like it's the smallest breakdown.
The heavier it gets, the more you got to be focused on doing everything right.
Right.
Yep. I got a question. Your shoes, your squat shoes,
Yep.
How have they lasted so long? Because I had a pair of Chuck Taylor made, they called them, I think, Chuck Taylor 2000s. And they came out in like 98 or 99. And they were just regular. They looked like basketball shoes, not Chuck Taylors, but they were that really flat sole with a slight heel elevation. And I loved squatting with them. And all I did was wear them for squats, leg day. And I think mine disintegrated after 10 years. So
I think those were more canvas based, where the Adidas I used were more leather based.
okay. Because you still squat in those, right?
Yeah.
That's insane.
Wow.
Dude, they're older than probably 90% of our lifters.
Yeah, I've got my old Adidas deadlift shoes still that I keep in the car that I wore at the Teenage Nationals in 1982.
That's
Wow.
remarkable. That's probably a good testament to the precision in your lifts. No wasted movement, because if you're driving straight through the sole, they shouldn't get worn out. If your force angle is to the side or at an angle, and that's probably mine wore out. I should actually probably look at that more closely. But
yeah, I always see how I developed any technique or anything is I never watched video or read anything to get technique. I went by feel.
Nice.
If it felt really good and the weight went up, then it was good, and that was my technique.
That's really interesting, because that's almost like how a bodybuilder kind of approaches things. Where they're trying to feel the muscle. I mean, obviously you're maybe not feeling the muscle, but that's real.
You are feeling the muscle because it's everything together.
Right.
But if it doesn't feel good, if it's not part of who you are on the inside. See, everyone looks at technique and they say, well, based on the length of your femur or your arms or this is the way you should lift. And that's not true, because I was in at Jackson Wink, which is where all the fighters fight in Albuquerque.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And the chiropractor there, naturopath guy, Dr. Bo Hightower, there was in the waiting room, he had a medical journal, and I was reading an article, and it showed like 5 MRIs of hips, all different people. And there was just tiny differences in the angles of the hip structure on the inside. And then it got me to thinking, well, this is the real reason why you have whatever shoe you're wearing, whatever stance you're wearing, whatever bar placement you have. It's what's on the inside, not on the outside, that makes everything work.
That's funny too, because I had a similar thought, not from MRIs, but I remember in school at one point learning about tendon insertions and things like that. And the reason frogs can jump so high is really just because their Achilles tendon is farther away from their I don't know if they have a tibia or whatever their tibia bone is than other animals, and it's not very much further. It's percentage wise, it's just millimeter wise, it's a fraction of a millimeter. But because that Achilles is farther on their heel from the bone, they got a better leverage. And I remember thinking about that and thinking like, geez, why am I analyzing my lifts based on like some generic, shin length or femur length or when something is half of a millimeter of a difference of the insertion of like one tendon can make a frog be able to jump what a human would jump like 50 feet.
That's why I took all the time I did on setup.
Yeah.
If I think I on Dave Tate's podcast, there about 90% of lifts I think are missed because they don't take their time to get in the exact perfect position during a setup to where they feel all that tension and everything in the body that has to work as one. The body can't work separately when you try a max lift in a squat, bench, or deadlift.
Mm-hmm.
Everything has to work all at once together, or else there's a breakdown right away.
Did you find you got into a point where you just had your groove, like you could do it pretty quick, or was every time like almost pretty close to starting from scratch?
I tried to make everything exactly the same.
Yeah.
The exact steps, the exact everything, how I touched the bar, how I walked up to it, how I got underneath it, the same with the deadlift, the same with the bench.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting because as you're talking about setup, and I was at there's a powerlifting gym here in Michigan. That's where we both live, to kind of opposite sides.
I was just out in Michigan today.
Oh,
okay. Where at?
Buchanan, right over the border in Indiana.
Okay. Yeah.
Right next to Niles.
Yeah, you weren't that far from me. Maybe 45 minutes from me, hour from me.
Oh, I think in a couple of weekends I have a seminar in Portage.
Oh, that's
okay.
where I live. I mean, I lived in a small town just north of Portage. But where's your seminar at?
Where's that?
Strength.
I have to look.
Yeah, there's not many gyms, but so I could probably Powerhouse or
No, it's not Powerhouse.
Strength Beyond Family. But yeah, either way, yeah, I didn't know that. I'll be down there. That's awesome.
Cool. Yeah, I have a weed processing lab right in Buchanan.
Oh, awesome. Awesome.
Nice. So how long have you had that for?
Well, we started it before COVID, but COVID put everything back. So we got all our licenses finally in April. So we've been making hash since then.
Oh, nice. How was that process getting licensed and everything? Was it really rough, long?
It wasn't that hard. It's just a bureaucracy.
Yeah.
And Michigan was easier than Illinois.
Okay.
Yeah. Is that, are you looking for, how does it work with disbursement? You know, are you just trying to, a supply chain in Michigan? Is it Midwest?
You can only do in the state you're in because it's not federal.
Oh.
So
yeah.
We take the plant and we break it down and we turn it into products for the dispensaries.
Okay.
Awesome.
Gotcha. Is there anything specific to sport with your brand, or is it just
most stuff, if you can get anything to relax you,
right,
and sleep with no pain, that's the object of anything.
Yeah.
Speaking of no pain, obviously you've got pain, but how your career, your longevity is, I mean, there's quite a few things that are remarkable. One, I don't want to get too far on a tangent with my questions because I got like 9,000, but Chris Duffin was on and I told him, I think the most impressive gym lift I've ever seen is his 675 for 20 on deadlift. Mm-hmm. But I still think the most impressive competition lift is your 901 at 220 with a 2-hour weigh-in.
And no deadlift bar either.
Yeah.
And get this, what people don't know is we actually had to pass a drug test.
Yeah.
That's the IOC drug test too.
Just remarkable. But that was a long time ago. You were
91.
And so like I said, the Mountaineer Classic, you won that for all weight classes, and that was like 2000. Yeah. And your first competition was what, 83, something like that? 80.
My first competition ever was 1980.
Geez, yes.
Okay.
So, well, you probably don't have an answer other than just finding a way to work through injuries. But would you say to be able to, it's just remarkable to me that you were at the top of the game for that long. It's like who's the arm wrestler, Brzezinski,
Yeah.
Every once in a while, there's someone who's just like, basically your whole life, they were at the top of the game. I mean, from way before, because I didn't even I got interested in bodybuilding. I think I saw the Arnold Classic in like the first one, like 89, and like 94 is when I started lifting. But by then you were already 14 years into your career. And you have essentially been like, you were the top power lifter for the whole time I was in the sport, which I started 14 years after you, didn't compete for like another decade, and then competed for whatever, 8 years or something. And you were still kind of the top dog. How did you manage to stay on top of the sport for so long?
I was extremely methodical in the way I trained. It's Albert Einstein had a quote, and to paraphrase it was, there's genius in simplicity. So my routine looks simple on paper, but to pick the right numbers for years and years, to get the adequate nutrition, sleep, technique, the right assistance work that had purpose for every single thing I did, there's the genius part behind the closed doors. But what I did is every training cycle after a powerlifting season of a couple meets, I went back and laid down a new base on exercises that I was weak at, but would transfer over. Like my hips and back were extremely strong. So my off season was a high bar close stand squat all off season. I would do a deficit stiff leg deadlift or a deficit deadlift with no belt all off season. I would bench with my feet up, and all the other little shit that went with it. It was the real power bodybuilding type thing.
Yeah.
But that's what is people do exercises without purpose and they waste so much energy.
Right.
They're not methodical about it. It's like they'll do an exercise for three weeks, like the old West Side Way, but then they stop doing it. I did a whole fucking 12 weeks or plus of high bar close stance to bring out my regular squat, because my basic strength is already there. We all have a basic strength here and a basic weakness here. We all do in some parts of our body. The thing is everyone does this, but they never bring up this.
Yeah.
So that gap, the bigger that gap gets, the more likely you are to either stagnate or get hurt.
Yeah, I would talk about that on a podcast recently, that it's harder than you'd think not to, I don't know how to even word it, but there's things you're good at. It's harder than you'd think not to focus on the things you're good at, because it's fun, because you're good at it. And I think that's where so many people go wrong, because it's no fun working on stuff you're not good at, and it's fun working on stuff you're good at. And even when you think you're working on weak points and you think you have a well thought out training program, I think most of us, if we were able to really step back and completely remove ourselves from it, we'd realize how much effort we put into things we're good at because we're good at it, probably to our detriment.
I think I was just a weirdo, because I enjoyed the other part the best, because I loved the training part more than I did competing.
Yeah.
I just wanted to be big and strong. And that when I switched over to powerlifting, my rationale was, if I can get the best I can be in powerlifting, I'm going to look pretty damn good anyways.
There you go.
Well, it's like you said with Kaz earlier. I was the same thing. He was one of my first. You and him were kind of my two guys always in powerlifting. And when I used to talk about, because there was only Powerlifting USA. And it would hardly ever come out. And there was like 4 copies I lived in Port Huron, Michigan, and there was probably like 8 of us who wanted it. And like four copies of it would come out every time and at GNC. And so maybe once a year, I'd be able to stumble upon a Powerlifting USA magazine. And I would just pour through every single page, over and over and over. But what I loved about the sport, and I was always more like power building, was because guys like you and Kaz and all through the 80s and 90s, before like the double and triple ply gear came in, you guys looked jacked and were strong. And I mean, I'm not really going anywhere with this, but I'm so happy to see that the sport's kind of returning to that.
Yeah, it is. The simplicity of going raw or kind of raw, and the ease for the meet directors too. And then the equipment just got too expensive. But I got into it to be big and strong, and when you have to learn that kind of gear, you have to wear it all the time, and it takes away from that raw strength and some of your physique. And I wasn't willing to do that. So I just, like I've said, I had my own standards that I lived up to, and that's what I wanted.
Well, that's what's even more remarkable. I hope, not that we have that young of an audience, but I hope our younger audience that might not know that much about you really understand how impressive most of the things you were doing, like the 901 deadlift without a deadlift bar and a 2-hour weigh-in.
Well, tell me,
but drug tested and without the gear, without triple ply. I mean, it was, and you were still doing that way late in your career using single ply. And is this the clip here? Yeah, I think so.
Sorry to interrupt you. I can wait till you're done. Sorry, I didn't mean to throw you off. But I just want to check, watch this with the setup as you're talking about.
Beforehand, I doubled it in training.
That's crazy.
Nice.
Yeah, that video's got 3 million views, and 1.6 million of them are me.
I could have monetized it.
Yeah.
I always, because your sumo technique always mesmerized me, because it's pretty unique in that it's not a super wide stance. I could never. I try. I watch your Mark Bell deadlift videos on sumo.
So did I.
Conventional. I still refer everyone to those. If someone asks me how to deadlift, that's what I send people to. But for whatever reason, most people kind of don't like sumo or dog sumo, and I think probably more the modern sumo where feet are out to the bars and guys are, doing almost like a leg press. But I was mesmerized by your sumo technique, and I could never, ever, ever get the form correct.
I mean, I could teach you really fast, but I have really short legs. So it didn't feel comfortable going wide. And I had gone conventional all my life. So I kind of wiggled in and found a position by feel where I could feel the strongest and the most locked in.
And that's another right there. That's the other thing, because your frame is not that enormous. That's what like the numbers you put up to be drug tested for most of the career, no deadlift bar, no triple ply, and the numbers you put up. I just hope people realize how remarkable that your lifts were. I still think. I mean, I don't know. I still think, like I said, the 901 is probably, I think, the most impressive competition lift of all time.
You just have to take your time and want it. And, you know, I can honestly say I never set out to lift a certain amount of weight. I just tried to get better all the time. And if you get a little bit better all the time, a whole bunch of times, you end up being really good.
Yeah, especially over a 20-year career.
Yeah.
Well,
I competed for 28 years straight.
Jeez, that's unbelievable.
Well, I think like similar to the deadlift, and this is going to start off to sound a little bit like a stretch, but bear with me. But so my wife's a swim coach, and she's worked with some people that, you know, had a chance to get to kind of lower level of the Olympics and stuff. And when I met her, she was coaching me. And the big thing was like, you know, being a lifter, teaching me to swim, I wanted to like grit and like just muscle my way through. And I had to like elongate and really use my levers and all that. I say that because that's something even recently I forgot about, because I didn't deadlift quite as heavy for a while, and doing it recently, I just find it so interesting. Like, you know, my mindset is just grip and rip, you know, to where it's like, you really have to use that leverage at certain weights, you know, for the whip and the bar and stuff like that. I was just wondering, you know, just seeing how we have you here, can you kind of walk through like what it feels like from the floor up as you're going through, just for our audience out there?
Well, without a deadlift bar, there is no whip.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be extra tight in the right position to get that bar to move.
Yeah, that makes it even harder.
When I know where my stance is, so I set up against the bar, and I will kind of squat down, open my hips way up wide from the top, not push the knees out, but open up way up high. And then I would wiggle my way down. When I grab the bar and I pull the slack out, what I do with that is, with the slack pulled out, the under tension, that's when I'm pulling myself, wiggling into my position to feel when everything locks in and sticks. And then when you pick your sternum up, all of a sudden everything's locked. What that does, when I wiggle myself in closer to the bar, is I activate my hips before the pull actually starts. Most people, when it gets past their knees, they yell hips, hips.
Yeah.
My hips are already working from the bottom.
Okay.
I actually used to get a butt pump when I used to do reps in the deadlift.
Now, I have a question on that, because you've had hip surgery, right?
I've got both replaced.
Yeah, because you had to switch to conventional too. Did you switch to conventional before or after the hip surgery?
I had already done it all the time, but I switched beforehand. I had torn my adductor in training. When I used to get tight in training, and I locked in, the bar would actually move mid shin before I even tried to pull. That's how tight I got.
That's what kind of where I'm going with the question. Do you think, because I can picture that feeling, not in the deadlift, but I know when I was really squatting heavy, I always felt like at the bottom, it was almost like I had to pull myself into the bottom. It felt like my hips were kind of pulling out of socket, and I just felt like my body was just waiting for me to decide when to go up. And there was a point like 2006 to 2008 where I felt like you could put anything on my back, and when I got that feeling, it was coming up. But I also have hip problems, and I wonder, do you think that accelerated the hip problems? Or
no, I don't think so. My mom had a history of osteo and rheumatoid arthritis.
Yeah.
She had both knees replaced, a hip and both shoulders.
Oh, geez. Right.
So I was the lucky person that got it in the family.
Yeah. Well, you definitely tested that theory out pretty well.
I mean, I got my first hip replaced, which was more the old style.
Yeah.
With the incision more on the side. I still squatted 700 pounds without a problem below barrel.
Crazy. Well, even the Mark Bell the video, I think you pull over 600, right?
Yeah, that was just 6 1/4 for a couple.
Just 6 1/4. But it's crazy because you walk up, you look like, you could tell you've had hip replacements. You look like, you look like you're in pain, and then you just pop up with 600 pounds. I remember because when those came out, I was coming back. Actually, I took time off. I went to grad school, and I wasn't really training, and I was coming back and trying to get strong again. And I remember being pretty disheartened by that because you were like twice my age, hip surgery, walking up, and I don't think I was back to pulling over 600 pounds yet. And I was like, God damn it, that's
That's the thing, what I notice now is like there's certain parts of my body because of what I did for so long that are inherently very, very strong in the structure.
Mm-hmm.
But there are parts that are weak. That's where how I train now, how you got to be careful because those weak points will just go pop.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's almost the same type of training I did before. I just don't go as heavy. And there's certain exercises I can work harder than others. So I do. I mean, I can still squat and deadlift, no problem. I just don't go heavy on them.
So you still train regularly?
Yeah.
You think you always will?
Oh, I have to.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a great thing. You can't really get away from that, right?
Yeah, I don't. Yeah,
why would anyone want to?
Yeah,
Right.
it's a weird thing for people that were never bit by the bug. But once you were, it's just such a part of you. You just, because like I said, when I went back to grad school, there were periods where like I wasn't able to train much, and it was always like a linear descent into depression. It was like just such a thing I needed that you don't even really notice it at first until you're there, and then you get a session in, and it's like, this is what I'm supposed to do.
Well, when you're in the gym and you train, just your brain switches right away, especially with all the hormonal things that happen when you start to train.
Right.
So you associate that right away with something extremely positive. So as soon as you think of it and it's so positive, but then you realize you can't do it, then you're screwed.
Yeah.
No, it's funny because Justin and I used to compete together in our early like 20s, late teens in bodybuilding. And so I was training at the gym. It's about 2-3 years ago. And one of the trainers there, I was like, yeah, I might compete. And I started dieting. She's like, well, yeah, you do great in masters. And I'm like, masters, what are you talking? And then I had to remind myself because my brain goes back to those early 20s. I'm like, wait, I'm 41 now. I'm like, like when I'm in the gym, I feel like I'm back to that time. And
I noticed that too. I was telling my wife actually, because I feel like my brain's stuck in that youthfulness too. Also, because when I talk to people in the real world, I feel like I'm speaking as an adult, like Justin Harris, the father of 4, business owner. But it's weird because I can picture it. But when I talk to someone in the gym and I talk to another middle-aged person, I feel like I'm talking to an adult. I don't know what it is about the gym that does it, but I noticed that several times. And I was telling my wife maybe a month ago about it. It's just like, I don't know if I feel young or if my brain just still wants to think I'm in that prime. But for whatever reason, I feel like everyone I'm talking to at the gym that's my age. I feel like I'm talking to someone older than me. Outside of the gym, it's never like that.
I just, you know what? The gym is some of the best times I've ever had.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right.
So I'll never stop going. And I do like helping a lot of the people at the gym.
Yeah. Does that ever happen? I want to ask you that question. Actually, have you ever walked up to help someone with deadlift? Maybe it was a younger person, didn't know who you were or anything.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
I don't tell them either.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's awesome.
On Fridays, there's a commercial gym near the house that I go to because they have a lot of machines that I can use that don't hurt.
Yeah.
And there's some people that I'll be like, hey, if you do this, it'll fix that problem really quick. And they'll look at me and I go, well, I don't want you to think I'm just some idiot. I used to be somebody.
71 world records. Maybe I know what I'm doing.
Instagram or something.
Yeah, that's gotta be a good feeling. No, because they're going to go back and at some point Google you and be like, oh shit.
Well, and it was before the internet actually. And I don't know if you would know this name in the powerlifting circuit, but there was a guy, Don Yezbek. I don't know if that rings a bell at all, but he was a powerlifter through the 70s and 80s. Anyways, he came up to me when I was 19. And turns out, I guess he medaled in the Olympics and all this stuff. Like, not quite as obviously as established as you are, but he had some different records and stuff, and like gave me some pointers. And everyone in the gym like, do you know who that is? And back then, there wasn't cell phones or, any special stuff. But I was just, like no, but he's probably, I don't know, early 70s when he walked up and started coaching me on some stuff. And
very cool.
It was just cool because I still to this day can remember like when I'm getting set up stuff he told me or little drills he broke down, and there's an old
they all worked.
Weight.
Those guys are the originators. They're the ones that busted their ass for everyone else. We only had Justin said Powerlifting USA, and then there's Muscle and Fitness and Ironman and Strength and Health. There's nothing about bodybuilding I don't know from the old days because I used to read everything.
Same.
I loved all of it.
Yeah, I still know those years better than modern years.
Yeah.
It's because I mean, with the internet, it's like so much information. You get it and it comes in and it kind of falls out. With the magazines, you'd sit there, because you'd read them for a year straight on the toilet, or more.
Yeah.
So you'd know the article before you started reading. You wouldn't have to look at the words because you'd have them memorized practically.
You know what? I think there was a lot more uniqueness in the lifters and the bodybuilders back then too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think that's like that in every sport because, more information is great, and the numbers people are putting up in powerlifting are just outrageous now.
Yeah.
It's but like you said, it gets all the weird stuff gets filtered out, which is good, but it's not as fun, because there'd always be some guy who was really good on bench that had some weird ass routine, like he benched 500 for 7 days a week or.
This episode is brought to you by First Detachment. First Detachment is an expert formulated supplement company founded by renowned coach Justin Harris. We've combined science with real-world experience in each product. We are battle tested. Are you? Find your battle today at firstdetachment.com.
Something something weird, and like now that's not optimal, and who knows what he could have put up if he actually trained properly. But back then you didn't know, and so you'd wonder, like, geez, am I doing it wrong? Should I come in? Or there was a guy who used to do calves and traps to start every workout, no matter what he was training. And, another guy that did pull-ups every workout. And a lot of times, like the guy who did pull-ups every workout had a really big back. And so I'd always be like, man, like the magazines are talking about overtraining, but this guy does 5 sets or whatever every single workout, and his back's really big. Because you don't know what works, what doesn't.
Yeah, there were some powerlifters that trained like that for hours and hours, and they got strong really fast, but they just don't last long.
Yeah.
A lot of wear and tear. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just interesting going back to what Justin was saying earlier, though, like how you were able to, like you said, you're just really methodical and stay into that groove to not, overtrain that or get into some heavy injuries to where you could compete for so long.
No, it was how I picked my numbers.
Right.
In training, I had a training routine, and I knew exactly what I was going to do every single week on every single exercise and every weight and rep that was already mapped out. And that I wrote down like 100 times.
Yeah.
Till I knew and was very confident that I could do it all. And then I stuck to it. And not once would I ever change it. You can't change it because then it changes the outcome.
Yeah. Is there anybody that like influenced you in your earlier days or worked with you on any of your program design, or was it just?
Yeah. Fred Hatfield and a guy named Doug Furness, who was a really good lifter back then.
I didn't know
he
that.
was very athletic. Like he was 5'10", 275 with gigantic legs, but could do a straight splits.
Awesome.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
What was Fred Hatfield like?
Fred was a lot of fun. I will say, as crazy as Fred was, he would experiment on himself with every single thing he wrote about.
Yeah, his book that I can never remember the name of the big thick. It looked like a phone book. That was the first real like training book, like textbook I ever had.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had Josh.
It was like there was like bodybuilding and two of bodybuilding and powerlifting, a scientific approach.
Yeah, scientific approach. Yep.
Yeah, we actually had Josh Bryan on 2 weeks ago, and he was.
Well, that's who did that. Fred and myself were Josh's mentor. When Josh was a teenager, I used to go up to Santa Barbara and hang out with Dr. Salaria and his family, and one of his sons was friends with Josh, and he stole my phone number and gave it to Josh.
Nice.
So Josh started calling me when he was like 15 years old.
Nice. That's ballsy. I like it.
Yeah, he had some pretty fun Fred Hatfield stories, that's for sure.
But yeah, he used to travel a little bit with Fred near the end.
Yeah, Josh is a good guy. He's because I do training programming if I need, but with my clients, I'm generally a nutritionist first and foremost. And so Josh has kind of been the guy I refer people to for training, especially if they want to get stronger.
Yeah, I like his strength and conditioning and his approach to being not speed training, but more explosiveness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of good stuff there. I mean,
I got a question then on speed. Did you ever do speed work?
No.
Awesome.
I always tried to lift with force. If your brain tries to lift it with force. That means from the bottom or whatever, with as much force as you can. That is a form of speed training. The thing about speed training is a lot of times it's done with too low a percentage where there's no carryover. So it has to be heavy enough, and it has to be with force. Everything has to be with force. You know, Fred used to talk about compensatory acceleration, being able to take it down with a certain amount of speed, rebound to get that same speed on the way up. And that actually works.
I like that. Yeah, I never really, the speed stuff, I think, you know, it's probably more specific to the gear and stuff, but the speed stuff never really, from like a physics or science standpoint, never seemed to like sit with me properly.
No, I had talked to Shane Hammond once when he switched over to Olympic lifting, and he had been in a couple Olympics. He had a 435 snatch, drug-free. And I asked him about his strength levels. He said, I can move really, really lightweight, really, really fast.
Yeah.
His squat was a total dive bomb, free fall on the way down.
Yeah, he had knees like an elephant.
Oh man, I think there's only one or maybe two clips of him on the internet of him squatting, but there's one, and I mean, I think he's over 900, and I can hardly watch it.
It was a little over 1,000 actually.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Oh man, I can hardly watch it because it's like I've seen it 1,000 times, but every time I watch it, you're sure he's going to disintegrate because he's just free falling with it. It's impressive.
You just kind of watch it.
Yeah. Yeah, because I'm always your brain almost thinks it's going to be one of those injury compilations.
Yeah, like my video.
Yeah, I can't watch those either because I mean it's like a train wreck you want to, but then
I know what's going to happen. I lived it. I don't have to watch it.
I can't because then I know my next workout. That's the only thing in my brain. So don't let it happen. Don't let it happen.
Speaking of that, is there obviously you've been traveling around doing seminars for a long time? Are there any consistent things you think maybe that's out there that's a misconception or something maybe people are doing that's working against what they're trying to do?
I don't think people now do enough assistance work. You know, it's if you write a paper and you don't dot your I's and cross your T's, your grade comes down.
Right.
They don't pay attention to the tiny things that have a big effect on the end package. That's what all those little things hold you together and make everything else possible to work as far as total body structure and tightness and symmetry with strength.
Yeah. Is there a certain area that you see more than others? Is it, a certain part of the body that you're seeing more that someone's maybe neglecting, or
the back?
Yeah.
Where do you put the bar when you squat? What do you lay on when you bench? What do you pull within the deadlift a lot? Your back. What's
your thought on? You see all the new stuff on benching? Because you didn't have a big arch. Did you sit?
No, I was flat back. I could bench just as much with my feet up on the bench as I did down.
Well, I'm seeing a lot of people now talk about, because when I was learning to bench in powerlifting, it was the goal was to get almost your upper shoulder on the bench, get as far back down and shoulders pinched back. And now I'm seeing a lot of people arguing against that now. And then the more I watch like the older lifters, the older raw lifters before all the gear and stuff, it seems like that's the way they bench, more flat back.
They had more muscle back then. I just, in all my lifts, what I tell people is I concentrate on keeping my sternum up, not my chest, my sternum. If you pick up your sternum, you'll feel your shoulders come back, your upper, but your mid to lower lats lock in too. So look at every lift you do, a squat, a bench, a deadlift. Look at a standing curl. Look at an overhead press, a bent over row. All these lifts, you can't do it hunched over like this. It has to be in the right position, and that has to do with your sternum.
So you say with back work, what were some of your favorite assistant back exercises?
Mostly bent over rows and medium to wide grip chin ups.
Awesome. I knew you were going to say that. But what's that?
We had bent over row contests in the gym.
Yeah. That's kind of why I asked, because I had heard that.
Yeah, well, all my compound heavy exercises, I would follow the same rep scheme as my main squat, bench, and deadlift, because I wanted to bring up those as much as I could with strength too. And it just worked. I mean, I think we ended up doing 578 for a double in the deadlift. I mean, in the bent over row.
Yeah, I'd heard it was 585.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it
Somewhere
was
up there.
well,
There was a
because
strong man in the gym named Brian Schoonfeld back then.
yeah.
And we used to have contests. Yeah.
The reason I know that is because at my strongest, I think I did a 495 for 6, maybe something like
That's
that.
awesome.
But someone and I always wondered, like, because I haven't seen much more than 5 plates from by anyone, and I wondered like what the, and so somehow I can't remember if someone commented on the video or someone, but someone told me that you did 585 for 2, and so that was always my goal. I never got there, but
yeah, it was right around there. Again, it all comes down to purpose. What's your purpose?
Right. Yeah, and so now you were training. Was it always in the in Illinois there?
Yeah.
Where you're originally
Quads.
from?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Mostly at Quads Gym.
yeah.
For the
Yeah,
most
I knew.
part.
Yeah, I used to get updates on your training in the early 2000s. I knew a couple of people who trained there, and they'd always report on when they saw you train and what you were doing. Yeah, like I said, I've been a fan since because you were like the guy when I started. So you were like for someone, like if someone fell in love with basketball during Michael Jordan's prime, obviously Michael Jordan's going to be their guy. And I started in the mid 90s, and so that was like you were always like the guy. And I just realized you said you competed 28 years. So your last competition was 2008.
7.
Okay.
At the end of 7.
Okay. I just barely beat you then, because I was just doing the math. I was born in 79, and my last competition was 2008. So
yeah, it was after I blew my knee out, and I just wanted to make sure that it was okay to come back.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I didn't go as heavy as I could, but I just went to meet. I squatted 931. And my cousin who did my surgery, he was actually in the audience in Vegas.
Oh,
So
yeah.
then he came back and he said, well, I know my job. I did well.
Yeah.
Okay. Then he left.
Yeah, I think so.
Wanted to
Right?
make sure.
Well, so that's even more impressive. So I wasn't a terrible power lifter. I had, all-time state squat record at one point. But your last competition, which was roughly the same time as my last competition, when your first competition was when I was in diapers, was you still out squatted my best squat.
Well, that's not too bad then.
Mine was 924, but
it was at that point I felt my first hip starting to go. I knew something was bad, and I knew I couldn't be the old me again,
Mm-hmm.
and I couldn't progress.
Mhm.
And that's the only reason why I kept going, was I knew I could get better.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So then I knew it was time to just say, see you later.
Was it an easy transition, or was it hard?
It was easy.
That's awesome.
Because I knew it. I knew I just couldn't be me.
Yeah.
Did you still want to be you though? Because that was me. Because
I wish I could have.
Yeah.
I wish I could have stayed.
Yeah, that was me. It was harder to leave everything than I thought it would be. I thought I was ready. I mean, I wasn't even really injured. I just knew it was time, and I thought it would be an easy transition, and it wasn't as easy as I thought.
No, there's always that little part of you, but deep down you do know that you should go.
Yeah, I knew I wasn't going to put up better numbers for whatever reason, whether it was mental or physical. I knew it just wasn't there anymore, but it was still, it's hard to give up when it's like, I mean, like I said, I was, 9 years old when I got my first weight set. So it was kind of like my whole life.
Yeah. But everything about it is positive. Everywhere where you went, everything you did, it all revolved around it. And it was all great fucking shit.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, still lifelong friends. Like Joe and I trained with Steve Kuklo in Clinton Township, Michigan, and so I've known Joe almost 20 years. We didn't talk for 15 years, and then like you come back and now we own a business together. It's like the kind of the friendships you make in the gym are just a different kind of deal.
Yep, you really know the people.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've seen them puke.
Yeah, you know what? When people ask me about all that stuff, and I said, when I did heavy squats, and there was an occasion where I shit my pants, but I still made and finished the set.
Yeah,
got to finish.
The bloody noses, torn calluses, throwing up. My tail was still wagging the whole time.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah, That's awesome.
No, it's funny you say that, because I talked about that a while back, that like I was pissed off because Justin got a nosebleed a couple times squatting, and I could never. I was so mad at myself. I wasn't pushing hard enough because I didn't get my nose to bleed. Like I almost passed out. I threw up. My freaking nose wouldn't bleed though. I'm like, oh, damn it, he keeps outworking me.
I pick my nose all the time, so I had an unfair
I
advantage.
had to have my nose cauterized 3 times to get it to stop.
No kidding.
Yeah.
I did do with that little the Q-tip thingy that
the long matchstick with
yeah.
it was silver nitrate.
It
would burn it shut.
Yeah, the doctor gave me a couple because I by the time I came in for a second time doing it because it just bled constantly. He gave me a couple extra ones and just told me what to do. Well, I didn't pay much attention, and so the first time I did it myself, I just smeared it all around.
Oh.
So my whole nose was black. I didn't realize if you got on the outside edge, it did it all. So I just looked like an idiot for 2 weeks.
Oh my god!
I looked like I had a frostbite on my nose or something.
Yeah, it was all scabs.
Yeah.
Yeah, this wasn't the one, Justin, but I gotta find it because I think there's a video of you with a bunch of stuff outside of hanging out of your nose. There's a bunch of paper in one of these old back when YouTube first started. That's good stuff.
Yeah, you were an extremely thick monster back then.
Yeah, there's a period of time. We all have our moment in the sun. I didn't have a quarter century in the sun, but
so
yeah, I miss that. That's kind of what I meant. It's a weird thing because you kind of know your identity, and whether you want to or not, is known as the big guy, and then you retire and you don't. Then other things are important, and I want to be known as the old guy. I don't want to die young, but it's hard because when people see you and they know you as being 290 pounds, and then they see you. It's not like I'm small, but they see you you've lost 50 pounds, and that's the first thing they say every time is, "Oh man, what happened?" Like that.
You know what? I look at it when I see some of the old guys. I look at it and I get impressed if they look healthy.
Yeah, same. Because it's hard. It's hard to let go because your brain's like, man, that was fun. Maybe I should try to get that way again. But
yeah, but the things you did then, if you even tried a 10th.
No, not worth it. Yeah.
Is there anything just with that, anything you've changed with your approach to training for health, say the last 5 or 10 years that comes to mind? Or
you know what, a lot of the other people, not to use them as a plug, but when I got with Merrick Health, they changed everything. My testosterone level was in the dirt, and my T3 and T4 were almost completely shut down. I couldn't figure out why in the gym I would do a set of 5 with something that I knew I could do 10 with, and I was out of gas.
Yeah.
And I signed up with them with Steve Granzella, Little Smoky.
Yeah, he's my guy too.
I don't even put up a code because I don't want any money from them. They're helping me stay healthy and alive, and they straightened out a lot of shit. That's all I care about.
Yeah,
they are really. Yeah, I don't want to give an over plug either. I mean, I will. I guess I'm with them, but
they're really good at what they do.
Well, because I was on TRT, and I got my blood work and my test was 396 on TRT, and they explained how, because I was doing it once a week, and they didn't really change my dose, but they changed the way I did it, and they added DHEA.
Going to microdosing.
Yeah, and then and I feel great. I need less sleep than I've ever needed. I mean, I have tons of energy. I have more energy than I did back when I looked like that, probably because I'm not all toxic. But
but when the feeling that I miss the most is when I used to wake up in the morning and I was already swollen tight, and I felt like I could bench 500 with no warm up.
Yeah. We almost even your toes are pumped. Just everything feels like
everything is tight, and it's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I think just speaking of that, feel and things, right? Like back then, I know nutrition was maybe now it's probably over indexed, but was there anything you found that worked better for you, or even other guys you trained with, from a nutrition approach for meats or for I just
kept my protein higher, and I had red meat every night before I went to bed at midnight. You know what? My nutrition was kind of based like this. I have a mirror, I have a scale,
sure,
and I have the gym. If I look pretty good in the mirror and I was within my weight class and my performance was good at the gym, there's no reason to change anything.
Sure.
So I didn't.
Yeah.
You mentioned weight class, something that really kind of, kind of affected or guided my approach to nutrition was realizing that every guy I knew that was always trying to add size, always eating a ton and trying to add size, never seemed to like gain a ton of size.
No.
But then every powerlifter I knew that was trying to make a weight class was always struggling to make a weight class, and they were always moving up a weight class and always adding size. And so that's why really where a lot of my approach to nutrition came from, where I have guys diet down at periods of the year, even when they're trying to grow, because then after the diet, it's because it seemed like every time a guy was stuck in a weight class and then finally couldn't make the weight anymore and decided, okay, I'm just going to go up to the next weight class and added a little bit of food, it was like, boom, they just exploded overnight.
And they were huge.
Yeah, yeah. And so that's a lot of where my approach came from, where I have guys diet down hard, even when they're not competing, because of that slingshot effect afterwards. And I realized that also with bodybuilders, you know, they compete once a year trying to turn pro, and they'd stay a heavyweight. You know, they weigh in at 222, and then they turn pro and they'd compete 4 times a year. And in 2 years, they're competing at 250. And you could argue, you know, it's likely other compound drugs involved and things like that. But I thought, well, geez, there's like a pretty strong correlation here. The powerlifters that are holding their weight down, when they stop doing that, explode up. Bodybuilders, when they're more frequently bringing their weight down for competition, they seem to grow better for the times they're not dieting. And so that really shaped the way I approach things.
I think it has to be a more natural approach, that your body can't handle those extremes. It ends up getting rid of it. You think that you're big, but you're really not. You're not putting on any added muscle at all.
Yep. Yeah, and then even worse, when your body fat gets beyond a certain point, your insulin sensitivity goes down when you aromatize more testosterone to estrogen. So yeah, that's interesting you say that, because I remember as a young guy noticing the powerlifters I knew trying to make a weight class. It was like, as soon as all the guys that were trying to grow were never changing. The guys that were trying not to grow, when they finally realized they couldn't make the weight class anymore, it was like, boom, shot right to the upper limits of the next weight class almost overnight.
Yeah, well, people overdo everything.
Yeah.
When in my off season, I was 100% perfectly clean.
Oh wow.
So when I switched over and did all those other exercises that worked, I knew I couldn't be as strong as I was in my regular squat, bench, and deadlift. So my ego would get thrown out the window. I didn't have to worry about it. I could just concentrate on the pure movement itself. And I think that helped me out a lot.
Awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone who goes far in either bodybuilding or powerlifting or both, I think at one point makes that realization. When you're young, you're lifting more than you should, you're not using the right muscles, and you just kind of spin your wheels. And then at some point, either you continue to do that and never go anywhere, or learn that there are times when you need to put your ego at the door and actually work the muscle that's supposed to be worked.
Especially those really important growing years. Everybody can lift lightweight with bad technique.
Yeah.
It's really easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once you get to that certain threshold, I have a buddy who's a strength coach, been doing a long time, really smart guy. And I just love training with him because he's always backing me down. You know, he's just like, no, like, you're good. You know, you're like, but I get that, like I was saying earlier, that young mentality, like, no, I need to get after it. It's like, there's time, like, give it a couple weeks, you know, you'll be fine. Let's just work into this progression.
Time. You'll get
Yeah.
I got an idea. I got a question. How did you decide your numbers? You do like linear progression?
Mine was all linear, but I would have let's say I squatted 500 in the meet. I would base it how that 500 felt. And then I would say, well, at my next meet, I think I could do a 530 or 35. I would base my training on that, but I would start from the back end. What do I need to squat 535 at the meet? So I would start at the back end of it, you know, the 10th, 11th, whatever, as long as, you know, that cycle was that week. And I would just backtrack it all the way. And then I would rewrite it. And then I would rewrite it again till I knew everything matched up to get me to where I wanted to be, where I knew I could be. But it was, everything I did had to be doable.
Yeah.
I was pretty good at that part and holding myself back, because it's cumulative over a certain period of time, let's say 3 months, that you get strong. And that's what it's about. So if my squat got stronger, but my pause squat got stronger too, and then my bench got stronger, but my wide grip bench, my close grip, my incline, my shoulder press, my push downs, my stiff leg deadlifts, my bent rows, my chin ups, if they all got strong too, as a total package, look where you are instead of just getting a few lifts strong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you create this suit of armor of strength and muscle. Wherever you hit, you're locked in. So who's going to end up going farther or last longer?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like the what you said. What do I have to do to bench five or squat 530? Because that's another one of my pet peeves is people always have they have this goal, and it's like, okay, how are you getting there?
Yeah.
You see it all the time. Like, I want to be huge, or I want to be this much weight, or I want to squat this much, and it's like, great, yeah, we all want that, but do you have a plan of attack? Yeah, and so few people do that. They just and especially even worse, where guys are like, yeah, I want to be, because most of my clients are bodybuilders, and it's like, I want to be 280. It's like, okay, you're 200 right now. You said you've been 200 the last 3 years.
Let's get it up to 215.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. And let's plan a plan of attack, because just like having this pipe dream of this future date when you weigh this amount, when you're not, there's no methodology towards it, no plan of attack, no thought process.
Well, they took out 2 years of the process of laying down a base.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
It's the same with powerlifting. If I didn't base it on 530 or 35, but I based it on 555, there's a good chance that all the way along, usually about 3/4 of the way through, then you start missing lifts or you get hurt. And usually what they say is, this program sucks.
Yep. Yeah.
No, you sucked.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a good point. Yeah.
No, I will say, like, and Justin and I have talked about this before, but we both, grew up working class. Dad was a tool and die maker and things. And I will say that thought process helped me a lot early on in business. Like I did a lot weller than I should have from based on my background and in a certain corporate structure, because the ability to like say, okay, we want to be here in 3 years. Right. And then like reverse it. I picked it up from the gym. Like I didn't learn that in any kind of just like, and I was blown away at how many really smart, talented, well-educated people just couldn't really look at the full picture and just, the fancy term reverse engineer, which really it's just like, here's the end number, let's rock it out. And it's applicable in a lot of places. And I'm grateful that I learned that at a very young age, the hard way in the gym, like early.
Write a book like those books, everything I need to know I learned in kindergarten, everything I need to know I learned in the gym.
I think Dave Tate has a book out like that.
Does he? Awesome. Yeah. Dave Wood. That's awesome.
I'm actually reading he sent me a couple of them from when but I'm reading one of the two. Was it Under the Bar? And that's pretty.
Under the Bar is a good book. A cool book. He's got an interesting story. I like Dave a lot. I like Dave because he's always self-deprecating and says, I'm not very smart. And it's like, smart or not smart. I agree. Yeah. Because anytime I have a question that I know everyone's going to answer it this way, Dave's going to have a totally, it's like he's viewing it like through a mirror from the other side of the room and upside down. And it's just always insightful. I love Dave.
It's real when you learn how to do things, because you had to walk through the back door, not the front.
Yep.
It's real.
Yeah.
You see a lot of these like best-selling books that are really motivational stories and things. I think his book and Chris Duffin's, like some of the struggles those guys went through young in their life. It's like,
oh man,
just
the stuff Duffin did.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah. We've had him on. Yeah. I love him. He's an interesting dude.
Very.
Yeah. There's so high energy. I wish I had that kind of energy.
That's his ADHD kicking.
Oh man, it's his amphetamine or I don't even know. It's like, I know you can't bottle that stuff up. If they could, I'd be buying it. Yeah, he's cool.
We'll see everybody at the Swiss Symposium too.
Yeah.
We'll be there. Yep. Yeah, looking forward to that. Is there? Do you? Because you've done so many talks. I mean, is there? I guess how do you approach that? You're just really.
I do it more like a workshop.
Okay.
And then after I usually completely revamp everybody's technique to make it better, then we talk afterwards, because then they have a more idea of what they want to learn or what they want to ask if there's anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm just a moron that knows how to lift a lot of weight. And when we talk afterwards, they realize that, and they'll open up more to me than if I go up there and if I just listen to a seminar where someone's talking at a podium, they're not showing slides, or they're just I'm falling asleep.
Yeah.
I got to see it. You can't teach a sport unless you show them how.
Right.
And if you show them how one-on-one, where they actually have to do it, then they get a feeling, that visceral feeling from their brain to their body, and then it'll click.
Yeah,
You can't just say, I want you to throw a hook like this.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't
100%. Yeah, I always said I got to get my hands dirty. If I like in anything in school, like because the professor would do something, because I like my grad school is in physics, and so they do like this big math problem on the board, and when they're doing it, it makes perfect sense. It's like, oh yeah, that's. But then you go back to your room and try to do it, and there's nothing there. It's
No.
if I've got to work, I got to get my hands dirty. It's got to be like there's no way I can internalize it until I've like done something.
Yeah. Same thing. Exactly. Where when I tell the kids now too, I said, when you write this down and they go to type it in, I said, no.
Yeah.
Get some paper and write it down. You'll never forget it. There's a different feeling.
I agree. I've said the same things 100%. I feel like all the kids are losing so much with that, because 100%. There's something about drawing the picture yourself, writing, like doing arrows, or
it's the connection in your brain.
Right.
Yeah.
Your hand to your brain.
Yep. That's funny. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's actually interesting, because we had a seminar at the shop gym not too long ago, and kind of what you're saying.
Is that
like,
Virginia?
Yeah.
I was there. What a monstrous gym.
Oh man.
Yeah, was
awesome.
it just that? Were you there last week, or were you guys?
That was Stan was there last week. I was there 2 years back at a powerlifting meet.
Yeah.
I just saw Stan. I was just down there for that coach's. I saw Stan there. I like him too. I like him as a businessman, because just the way he puts names on things, like the vertical diet. And it's like, God damn it, I've been preaching like a similar approach, but I never, like, he just knows the right wording for everything.
Stan and I have traveled all over the world doing some things together.
Yeah, I like him. I like him too, because I can't even think of exactly what it was, but it was Merrick said something about it. I was like, yeah, well, something. I was like, oh yeah, Stan won't spend money, and so I'm like, Stan, I know he's killing it. I know he's got the money, but I respect that. I love that, like that the guys that are like making a ton of money but still live like.
When I flown with Stan, we flew to Kuwait before, or no, it was somewhere else, to Switzerland, and we flew coach, and they offered to fly us first class. Stan goes, no, save your money, just fly us regular. He had no problem in doing that.
Yeah, I respect that. I like that.
Yeah.
That's good stuff.
I would have taken first class, but I respect him still.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like too, like when we go through, social media or watch clips or watch you on podcasts, it seems like you're still having just a ton of fun with it and just really enjoying it.
What's not positive about it?
Right.
Or when you do a seminar or workshop, okay, they're paying your way, buying your food, putting you up in a nice hotel, giving you money, and you get to talk to a bunch of meatheads on shit that and they already like you before you even get there.
Yeah.
It's not too hard.
Yeah, it's not a bad deal.
That's what I always think. Like, it wasn't that long ago, since I was the one spending money to do the same, to do the same thing. So to what a life that, like, you fall in love with this thing called the gym and weights, and and now, like, you get to make money doing that.
And you get to do it with the same people that you grew up with.
Yeah. It's awesome.
No, I think to your point, like, not only the questions after are always cool. You're kind of like, well, I wish you would have asked that in an open Q&A, because it's such a good one. But then even after, like, a week later, we got a couple emails and messages, and you just get pumped about it, because you remember, like, being back then and you didn't have access.
I can go back, and in my mind, like the 901, I still know exactly how it felt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that's people that don't. I was trying to explain to I can't remember who it was, some about the gym, and because they didn't understand it, and they're like, you don't care to be big anymore. Why do you still why does it still matter so much to you? And it's like, I just don't even know. But I remember the smell of the gym, the first gym I ever walked into. I remember when we'd go on vacation when I was a kid, and there was a hotel, because this was when it was still like, we didn't have a gym in the small town I grew up. There was nothing. There's like 1,000 people in the whole town. We moved when I was a little older, but when I first learned about the sport. So when we'd go on vacation and there was a gym in the hotel, that was the first thing I did. As soon as we dropped our luggage off, I'd sprint down there and just, try every machine. And I don't know what it was about it that did it for me, and it's a silly endeavor, I mean, it's not like I'm solving world hunger, but there's something about it.
But you're solving a lot of shit inside your own head.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, it's true. My wife actually, if we travel, she's like, she already maps out the gym. She's like, I'm not dealing with you not working out. She's like, go do your thing. It's like,
my wife competed for Norway.
Oh, no kidding.
Oh,
That's
wow.
Yeah, when
awesome.
she was younger. Her claim to fame is she went to meet 6 months before I ever did.
That's awesome.
nice. So I take you guys met.
She would travel with the national team with all guys at a young age.
That's
So
awesome.
there's like nothing I could ever get over on her, no
Yeah.
matter what.
It's like having a bunch of brothers, right?
Yeah, she understands it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. That's
yeah.
awesome.
That's cool. So I take it you guys met on the powerlifting circuit
Yeah, I
somehow?
was in Birmingham, England, watching the World Championships that year. I was doing some talks, and she had flown over from Norway, which is a little over 2 hours, to watch. And I sat next to her in the audience, and then ruined her life.
There you go. And made her move. Do you guys still go there a lot? Do you still have family? She have a family there in Norway? Or?
Yeah, I was just there. And
Oh,
in
cool.
the summertime, they have what they call Faith for Strength Week, which is amateur strongman and strongwoman and Highland Games, and they invite people from all over the world.
That's
Oh, nice.
awesome.
It's in the oldest all-wooden hotel, right almost at the top of the mountain.
That's the coolest thing about going over to Europe and overseas is, like a building over here that's 50 years old is considered old. You
Yeah.
go over there and it's like, this is the powder tower that they stored gunpowder in 1100 AD, or it's like,
Yeah,
holy
you go in a
crap.
pub in England that's older than the U.S.
Yeah, it's
Right,
it's crazy.
right.
It's really cool.
Usually like Boar's Head or something
Yeah,
like that is going to
yeah.
be the name.
Yeah, yeah. And the stairway in will be like rock, and like you can see where the feet have walked over, 1,000
yeah.
years.
Yeah, I mean, I remember I did 3 weeks with Charles Poliquin with Matt Wenning, and we went to Toronto for a week, Amsterdam for a week, and Prague for a week. And in Amsterdam, you walk right by, and there's Anne Frank's house.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
And we went inside a cathedral, and I was standing on top of Rembrandt's grave. Like,
Wow.
holy shit.
Yeah, it's so cool. Yeah, it's like we get nothing like that in America. It's like, here's the Liberty Bell. It's 200 years old. It's like,
And everyone's like, yeah, so.
yeah, you go to Europe and it's like, this bottle of beer has been on this windowsill for 220 years.
Yeah.
Well, do you have Swiss coming up next? Are there any other anything before that?
Next week on Thursday, I have to fly out for the Brian Shaw Classic in Denver.
Oh, okay.
Cool.
That'll be a really, really cool strongman event.
Yeah, that's a big dude.
He's monstrous.
Strongmen blow your mind when you see him in person.
Yeah, especially me when I got up close to him. I mean, I did something with Brian once when I was out in Denver, and I was in his kitchen. I had to stand on a chair just so I was eye to eye to him.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So
Yeah.
I get there, and I get into his house, and we eat, of course.
Yeah.
And then about halfway through talking, we eat a little something again. We do a little podcast. Before we left, we ate at his house. And then he goes, well, he's with Nick Best. Great guy.
Yeah.
And before we get to my hotel, he goes, oh, there's this restaurant around here. Let's just go there and have something. What the hell?
Just like insatiable. Yeah, that with him, Nick, and Eddie, that show they did. I don't remember
Yes,
what.
and Robert Orff.
Yeah, my daughter, my second youngest, loved that show. She watched every episode. So
I've watched many of the video with those guys together off camera. And,
they're hilarious.
oh my gosh, they're great.
Yeah, they're funny. Yeah, that's something that I always didn't like about bodybuilding is that, like, they never seemed like the personalities or the friendship and camaraderie wasn't there like it is in powerlifting and strongman. But
that's the one thing I was very fortunate to be at the Arnold one year at that Hall of Fame thing that they have.
mhm.
And I got to sit next to Franco Colombo, which was my childhood hero, because he was short and he was strong.
Uh-huh.
There you go.
And we were talking the whole time, and that's one thing he didn't like about a lot of the modern bodybuilders is they were just so one-dimensional that they couldn't do anything else. They couldn't move or box or run or swim, or a lot of them couldn't do a lot of things that he thought was necessary to both get better, but to have a good life.
Yeah, and that's just in general. That's what bothers me about the sport is it's like that. There's only one Arnold or Franco, or I mean, like as far as outside of bodybuilding, if you can get yourself in bodybuilding contest shape and self-motivate yourself to wake up, for cardio twice a day and train and eat that diet, but then they don't apply that same discipline and self-motivation to anything else. It drives me crazy.
That's because they're so one-dimensional.
Yeah.
A lot of them, and I was in it for a little bit, is you don't think you can.
Yeah. Which is crazy, because I always say if you can get in contest shape, you can do anything.
Oh God, the stuff that you guys had to go through was crazy. Forget that crap.
That's I don't know what I always enjoyed powerlifting better, but for some reason there was something about bodybuilding that always sucked me in. And then you get 6 weeks into a diet, and then you're locked in, and you hate it, but it's like, oh, I got to finish it now. And then after the show, I'm like, I'm done. I'm only doing powerlifting. But then another year would pass, and you get the stupid idea again.
No, what's the line now? I'm waiting to try to turn pro after junior nationals. Wasn't it?
Yeah. Now it's waiting for masters, or it's now you can turn pro just about anywhere now. Yeah.
Yeah, they got a lot of different divisions to turn pro in.
Yeah. Smart
just
from a business.
Making money.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Start from a business standpoint, because if you're in that BC, like my clients, they'll compete in 3 separate divisions, like men's physique, classic physique, and bodybuilding. And then a lot of times the winner wins all 3 of them, and they got to pay an entry fee for each of them.
Oh yeah.
Smart business model. That's for sure.
It is, but you look at some of the guys that are turning pro now, and it's like, wow, that guy wouldn't have won my state contest.
Yeah. Well, like you said, you took what did you say, 8th or whatever? That's what it almost breaks my heart, because like when Joe and I did the Mr. Michigan, there were like four call outs in the heavyweight class,
Right.
Like 12 people took out of the top 15. I went to the Mr. Michigan a couple years ago, and there was like 4 heavyweight competitors.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I remember that. Yeah. In the one lineup, I think it was 4 guys ended up turning pro. And the last Michigan I did was Steve Kuklo, because he's one of the ones, but there was 4 guys that turned pro back in the early 2000s, so like when it was harder to, but it was stacked. I mean, it was
what's changed, because it seems like there's so many competitors, and the national shows are filled with people, but you go to any state show and they're dead now compared to what it used to be like.
I was at the Chicago Pro.
Yeah.
And I sat with a friend of mine, Chuck Serrano, who's
I know Chuck. Yeah. We were at Optimum Nutrition together.
Yeah, it was the best time I've ever had a bodybuilding show, because he was pointing out how to judge all, the women and the men, and then when the big pro bodybuilders came out, and there was only one guy in shape in the pros.
Yep.
Everyone else was like, it's like, oh my God, they're fat.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Like they're not even guest posing shape.
Yeah, and Chuck, I mean, because he was always in shape, and
he
actually
had to be.
Yeah, well, he actually kind of built my career, because I, like you said, turned pro after junior nationals. I did junior nationals, got my butt kicked, and I was thinking that was me. I was going to turn pro after junior nationals, but for whatever reason, Optimum Nutrition liked me, and they signed me as an athlete. And I did my first photo shoot with Chuck, and he ripped on me for being fat. But I came back the next year, Junior USA is not fat, and won. So
hey, many moons ago, I got Chuck ready for a powerlifting meet, his one and only.
Oh, no kidding. Awesome.
He went 9 for 9 and had 27 white lights all day and won best lifter.
That's awesome.
And then he realized how hard it was afterwards, and he couldn't lift for a month because he was too sore.
Yeah.
Killing him.
That's awesome.
I just saw him Monday. I got a massage at his gym, USA Gym.
Yeah. Cool. That's awesome. Yeah, I like Chuck. I mean, I only talked to him a couple of times, but he cracked me up, and he gave me a lot of good pointers as a young kid starting out in the sport.
Yeah, he's very direct. He's just old school.
Yeah, I like that. I'm not that type of person for whatever reason, but I love that type of person. I love being around that person who just calls it like they see it.
Yeah, it's the truth.
Yeah, it was refreshing, because you never have to wonder. You know exactly where to stand.
What they're thinking.
Where they stand, yep.
Yeah,
I don't want to be anyone else.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I know we're coming up on
what the time is.
Okay, I just want to make sure I was respecting your time, so we'll keep rolling.
Don't worry about it.
That works for me.
Here, I'm just going to make myself a New York strip.
Perfect.
There you go.
Just as long as you don't strip. But well, actually, I don't know. We might get more views then.
Yeah, we could. We can use the extra.
Probably not.
views.
Is it
That's awesome.
mature porn? I think that's a thing.
Yeah.
Who's watching that?
Nice.
No, I think I'd rather watch the stepmother ones.
Yeah, that's huge. There's
It
memes
is.
about that. Help me,
Hilarious.
stepmom. Stepmom, are you stuck?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Oh,
Oh, yeah, I
man.
feel bad. Like, yeah, the people who actually have a stepmom, if they ever Google anything about,
Oh man.
Well, that's kind of scary too with all the oh geez, what is it called now?
So let me ask you, Justin,
Mhm.
what is your nutrition like now, especially compared to then? I mean, back then it was a lot of over everything.
Yeah,
right?
over everything. Yeah, no, now I'm just more paranoid. I'm not going to live a long time. I got 4 kids, and so really,
Good.
it's
You got
like
pregnant.
yeah. I mean, well, I have to eat healthy because now that I'm out of the sport, if I eat junk, my face blows up. And I know this because I did Mark Bell's podcast, and I was sick the week before, and we're flying, and I just at the airport, I was like, screw it. And I got chicken wings from Chili's.
Oh,
And then
no.
every comment on the video is, I'm supposed to listen about nutrition from this fat ass. My cheeks are all puffed. So no, but mine is for breakfast. I usually have eggs. We live in the country, so they're farm eggs. They're real farm eggs where they don't even wash. Because you get eggs from the store and they wash whatever the chicken cooter produces some kind of covering on the outside of the egg shell that kills bacteria. And so, the reason when you buy eggs from the store, you have to put them in the fridge is because they wash that off with a chemical. If you don't, you can leave them on the counter for like a month.
Cool.
So yeah, with those usually with oatmeal grits. I love grits. Sometimes toast, and then after that, it's usually I love steak. I don't really eat chicken anymore now that I don't have to be super lean. So, like you said, New York strip is my go-to.
You ate nothing but chicken and
Yeah, for too long.
For 20 years.
Yeah, for too long. But there's a farm we get half a cow from, and then there's Richmond meat just on the street. So New York strip's my favorite meat. I do that with rice, usually at least a meal a day. And then I just had pineapple, tomatoes with some mozzarella cheese, and then cottage cheese. And so I still even though I don't really care, there's something in my brain that still tracks how much protein I have every meal. It's I can't avoid that, but it's much healthier, much lower calorie, and much fewer meals, 3, maybe 4 meals a day.
Yeah, Stan talked about that with the country type food, is he talked about the Amish and how much less heart disease they have than everyone else because of the purity and natural food.
Yeah, I always feel like I call it pick it, kill it, grow it. If you can't pick it from a tree, grow it in a garden, or hunt it for meat, you probably shouldn't be eating it. And if you think about it, for all but the last 150, not even that, really about 60 years, 70 years, 80 years, that's what we ate. You ate oatmeal. It's so our bodies have not had the chance to evolve at all for any of the modern foods we eat or any of the packaged foods. And so
no, it's definitely not meant to. I usually can tell by how well it sits in my belly.
Yep. Oh, and
right away.
Yeah, as I get older, it's amazing. I can really tell the difference now. You get older.
I would love to have hot dogs and pizza.
Yeah, I remember my dad complaining about, I can't eat that for breakfast. And I'm like, what are you talking about? It's just pizza. But now I'm like, I can't have that for breakfast. But no, that's really, I try to pick foods that really, from a more health standpoint, where if the food label says anything more than the food I'm eating, if it's got a whole list of stuff, then I try not to eat it. And not that I'm perfect, but the problem is now that I try to eat that way, when I do eat something crappy, it really just
you feel like shit.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I almost feel hungover.
And I look like shit too. So.
Yeah, you just almost feel hungover. You're like, what the heck happened, man?
I know, you don't feel good. And then you get pissed off at yourself.
Yeah, that's the worst, when you wake up hungover and you didn't drink. This isn't fair. If I was going to feel like this, I would have enjoyed it more last night.
We're going to have to do some cool shit, sit around a round table or something at Swiss.
I would love that. Like I said, I am trying not to fanboy too hard here. I know the comments are going to be, because I usually.
Well, I told you at Swiss, I knew exactly who you were. I followed you before.
Oh, believe me, everyone that listens to this knows that, because that's the first thing I did. The first podcast after that was let everyone know that Ed Coan knew who I was.
Fuck yeah, dude.
Yeah, no, like I said, when I started in the sport, you were the guy, and so for me that was it's like talking to Michael Jordan right now. I mean, it's this. I mean, you were like what shaped my whole. You and Kazmaier, because the World's Strongest Man repeats, were on ESPN, and so that was like, I mean, I competed in bodybuilding, but I was never really a fan of bodybuilding. Like the guys I followed were always strongman, always powerlifters, and that was really always what I loved was the strength, and I loved like the 80s powerlifters, 70s, 80s, and maybe low 90s, when guys still just looked jacked.
There was a different look.
Yeah, I love that look. Yeah, it was like yoked or whatever. I don't know. So that was kind of what I always aspired to. And then I think mostly because if I wasn't really precise with my diet, I just got really fat. I think that's kind of what led me towards bodybuilding, because I just got so obsessed with the diet and nutrition. But it was always powerlifting. It was always my love.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, when you limit yourself and are such on a restricted diet and doing that shit for so long, you actually create problems for yourself.
I have celiac, and I don't know when I got it, but I know I never ate bread or wheat when I was a bodybuilder. And I remember I would always get really sick after a contest because, for a couple of days you'd pig out.
Eat whatever you want. Yeah.
And I always thought I was just getting sick because I ate junk. But when I finally left the sport completely, and I remember exactly what it was, I felt like crap for a long time, for like a year. And I always had like a low-grade fever and I always felt achy and could never figure out what it was. And then one night I went out with my wife's family and I had like 3 Miller Lights and I was throwing up the next morning. I was like, oh my God, this is embarrassing. I'm like, what a lightweight. And my wife's like, you know what? I think you have celiac. And so, I never even thought about it, but I got tested and I did. And I always wonder if it's, I didn't eat wheat for 10 years.
If it's something you were born with that was going to happen, or did you cause it?
Yeah, right. And because I never ate it. So you can imagine not eating it for a decade, and then I'm reintroduce it. I can imagine my body would be like, whoa, what's this? I don't like this. I think
we cause most of our problems ourselves.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and I think you're seeing it more. All these food allergies, all that were never a thing before, where now we know they exist and we try to do things to our food to make them not happen. All it does is just make it happen more often.
Yeah, I remember when I was talking to Eric Serrano, I sent him my blood test and he didn't like my calcium being up so high. He goes, why is your calcium up? I go, I have no idea. I said, I think it's probably a family thing. And then he went through my diet and I was drinking 1 Fairlife a day.
Yeah.
And he started laughing at me, got me off that. And of course, at the Swiss last year, he had to mention it during his talk and point at me, laugh at me in the front row.
Yeah, he's an interesting fellow because every time I hear him talk, I'm like, no, that can't be right. And then, like, sure enough, I don't know, 6 months later, a year later, I'll be reading some study. And I'm like, oh, God damn it, he was right again.
Yep. That's what he does. Every time he is not in the office, if he goes and sits down, whether it's on the toilet or at a chair, he reads a study.
Yeah. Well, I remember him talking about neurotransmitters with anabolics, PEDs. And I was like, bullshit. I remember not really like that, but I was like, it was more like I had never heard of that. That doesn't seem right. And this was a decade ago, maybe more. I don't, and him talking about it. And I remember thinking, like, I have never seen anything in the research, anything about this. And sure enough, a decade later, you Google anything about like anabolic steroids and neurotransmitters, and there's tons of new research on it. So.
Yeah, I think even like when Huberman took off, he's talked a lot about that. Kind of brought a lot of the social media, shined a light on a lot of that stuff, which is interesting.
Yeah, but Eric's he's interesting because like it's like you say, and he the way he like talks about it is like a dude just talking about stuff, and so it feels like, okay, this guy's talking about it like my buddy at the at the gym. I know he's a doctor. I know he's incredibly smart, but the way he's talking about it, and I've never heard of it. He's got to be making this up, but he never is. He's always right.
Yeah, last year at the Swiss, when I was sitting down with the Merrick Health guys, Little Smokey bring my wife over because she's with them now too.
Oh, awesome.
And Eric came over and sat down and said to the Merrick Health guys, okay, this is what you're going to do with her. And he told them what to do with her, not to do anything they wanted. What he was going to tell them.
Yeah, I like what he does too with his visits, where it's just a flat rate. no insurance. You go in and pay. I wish there were more doctors doing something like that.
Well, there's not a lot of doctors that actually care.
Yeah, that's the problem. Yeah.
Yeah, it's more
Yeah,
turn and burn.
Yeah, and I can even understand because my wife's a dentist, and so I know how like expensive dental school was and how burned out they are by the time they graduate, and then they don't make that much to start. And like if you're like a general practitioner or family doctor, really doesn't make much. And they're not like they get crapped on by the insurance companies, and you can imagine it does just turn into a job to so many of them, which is terrible because that's the one job where you don't want it to just be a job to them.
100%.
Well,
the system fucks up all the time.
Yeah.
I think a lot of places like it's cash based, which again, a lot of the stuff that like the Merricks out there that should be covered. Proactive, more healthcare, but I think from a service standpoint, that's definitely raising the bar a little bit.
This system, because my wife from Norway, where they got a lot of places are great out there, is they don't try to treat you, they try to heal you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which is not what we're designed for.
Our system can't work that way. Yeah.
Yeah. Money.
Yeah. And it's so expensive and everyone takes their cuts and we have we really have a terrible system, and I'm not like, it's not like a battle I like feel like I'm an expert in or care, but we're stuck between, and I'm not someone who like wants single payer, but we're stuck between, we don't have that. But we don't have a totally free and open market healthcare either. No. And so you got this semi-restricted, but it's not single payer, state by state insurance. Everyone's taking their cut. Every insurance company charges different. The doctors have to decide, like, is this even worth it for me? I'm not making any money on this. I'm losing, and so it's just a terrible system.
I dread having to go to the doctor because I know what that insurance shit going to do.
Yeah. Oh, and you see what,
especially now that I'm old.
Yeah, but then you see the real bill. It's like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah,
paying like $7,000 for an X-ray. I know it doesn't cost that much. It shouldn't.
An intern or a resident came in and looked at you for 5 seconds, and they charge you $1,500 for that.
Yeah. And then even worse, and the insurance is making 90% of that. It's like,
yep.
Well, and to your point about the like extra markers, I know. So a really good friend of mine's Mike. He's the M in Merrick. There's Derek and Mike, and so Mike's a good buddy of mine. Known him for over 20 years, whatever. We used to work together actually for a while. But so he set me up with some testing, and I found out I had hemochromatosis, like one of the mutated genes. I don't have both, but no record of it ever. And it's like, well, how long have I had that to where like just
forever.
Exactly. So I'm like, well, good to know. And my primary care was cool enough to, not turn his nose up at that. Like he took the initial lab and then he ran extra testing to like, confirm everything. But it was just,
when
they did it.
They took 6 vials in urine.
Yeah.
And nobody else had ever taken that more than 1 vial and never had a urine test.
Yeah, right. When they give you that printout of your full, like your first blood work, and it's
holy shit.
Yeah, it's like I didn't even know.
My kidneys, I got to be careful of because a lot of those years I was on anti-inflammatories all the time.
Yeah, mm-hmm. Same. Yeah. Well, I have a story about that. Because I got blood work this years ago, and it was. I was stupid in that I'd get blood work, but I didn't the doctor wouldn't say anything. So half the time I wouldn't even look at the results. They said everything looks good, but my creatinine was high and my estimated GFR was low. And I was like, whoa, what's this? And so I looked back and it had been like that for several years. And my GP was like, oh yeah. It was like she never even noticed it, but I was really upset. And so I asked to see a nephrologist. And, and of course I knew that my creatinine would be artificially elevated because of my muscle mass and stuff. But he's like, he gave me a 24-hour clearance test to test my true GFR. And my GFR was 135, which is like perfect. But my doctor never said anything, never, and it's like, what if it wasn't? And if I didn't take the time to look into more detail, I wouldn't even known that I might have a problem. And so
my talk on Zoom was with Brandon and Jessica.
Mm.
And
Jessica's a client.
She's cool. The way they talked to me made me trust them 100%, and made me feel more at ease. And they're not over there. They're not alarmists.
Yeah.
Where they talk to you like you're a person, and they know that they can help you get better. That's what I like.
That was because I was even worried because when I got my first, I was like, well, I'm on TRT, so I don't even know what my test level is. You know, it's because it changes depending on how close the shot was. And they said, don't even worry about it. So we're not going to yell at you whether it's high, low, or whatever. We're going to tell you if it's out of range, how to make you more healthy.
Yeah. They asked me, well, what do you want? Do you want to be jacked again? Do you want this? I said, no. I said, if I'm the healthiest I can be, I can look as good as I want to be. That's my choice then.
Yeah.
Right.
I just want to be healthy and feel good.
Yeah.
Right.
Were
there any changes like that you found now in life that like dietary changes you had to adjust to from there? Or?
I just move more and eat less shit.
Yeah. Pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
That's
what's gonna help me do it for long term.
Yep.
If I want to cheat a little bit, I'll cheat a little bit. I just don't try to eat a whole pizza.
Yeah.
Right.
I'll just have a little bit and then I'm done.
Right.
That's about diet earlier. That was probably the hardest thing. For so long, I was trying to get big and trying to stay big. My thought process was never, am I actually full? It was always like, can I eat whatever's in front of me or eat as much as I can? And that was the hardest thing, was learning to eat off plan or off of my diet, but not binging, you know, like knowing that I could have, 2 slices of pizza. And if I'm not hungry anymore, I don't have to eat the third or eat a fourth.
The amount of copious foods just that bodybuilders can eat, it just blew my mind always.
I think back to, because I used to eat, just so much at my peak. Because I have it written still down at Elite FTS with some of my diets, and it blows my mind. I don't know how did I live a life? I was eating every hour and a half. Where now, like I eat, if I eat 4 times a day, I feel like, oh God, it's taking up so much of my day. I got other crap to do.
You got to give. I was say you got to give Jory a lot of credit too, because I remember we would go to the movie theater and both of us would walk in with 2 footlongs from Subway maxed with meat, and like his poor wife's like sitting there, it's got onions and all this, just pounding stinking food. Like, you guys just got done eating. Like,
yeah, she's a saint. Because I brought it up at one point when, because the first time I think we went somewhere and I didn't pack all my food, like I was out of the sport. And I was like, wow, this is a lot different. She's like, oh my God, yeah. She's like, it's like, you're worse than our babies. She said, I don't think you realize. She said, it was twice as much work getting everything ready and your cooler and getting food and making, because you'd forget this. And so it's like, oh man, geez, I feel bad now. I didn't.
Yeah, when Stan was helping Brian Shaw, Brian's wife actually thanked Stan because the amount of shit that Brian would eat at all times just to try to stay big, because that's what everyone used to think. Was everything changed. Everything changed. He finally wasn't living on the toilet.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the other thing. I look back at some of those diets. I'm like, there's no way I was absorbing all that. I mean, there's no way, especially because my body weight, if you do what it's at now compared to what it was then, it's like I'm eating like 20% of the calories, but I only weigh 20% less. The math isn't mathing. So how much of it was I just shitting out?
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think Stan was talking about that, the sushi rice, right? Where he's talking about, just little hacks too. Like for a guy that size, it was kind of cool to hear those little hacks. And
sugar in the rice. Yeah.
Sugar in the rice.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's got good tips. Yeah. He's I like Stan.
Everything he talks about, he does research.
Yeah. I like Stan because so many people, and I really try not to do this. At one point in my life, I realized I said something and I didn't know if it was true. I just said it. It must have been because I heard someone else say it or I read it, And I remember thinking like, crap, if someone called me on that, I don't know if and so I made it a point to, and Stan's a guy where I feel like everything he says is his,
He researches it and he calls up the professors or doctors at the universities.
That's awesome.
Before he does any type of talk.
Yeah, I like that because so many people are they might be saying correct things and they probably are, but it's not their things. They're saying something that they read or they heard someone else say, but it's not theirs. Where anything Stan is saying, it's his. It's his. He's
Yeah, and he's taken 100 and something blood tests on himself.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yes, you think he's got the data to support it just a little bit, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I respect him for staying so lean after competing too, because that's for me. It was always just hard to be lean. Getting big and strong was far easier than looking like a bodybuilder, because I eat healthy now and I don't eat that much and I eat clean and eat lean foods, but Stan's just always shredded. It's just
He does stay in shape, the old fucker.
I know. I hate it.
Yeah, you got to stay active, man. That's and the travel. I mean, traveling. I know that was something that's shocked me probably the last 2 years a little more. And he was sharing some different travel hacks and all that of like
Yeah.
all the stuff he packs and those good things. But that's hard too, man. There's so much garbage whenever you
There's
try to grab.
it's impossible to find good food. You at an airport, good luck. There's just nothing.
Fuck that.
Yeah, it's and then you can't bring food. TSA steals everything. Everything's liquid to TSA. Peanut butter's a liquid. It's like every time they, I don't. Every time they take my food, I'm like, they're like, you can't bring liquids on the plane. I'm like, that is steak. It's got water in it.
Oh God.
I know half the time they're probably just being dicks because they can, but it's like, God damn it, just nothing gets through. Everything's a liquid.
Yep.
Yeah, I get checked almost all the time too. I always get patted down.
Yeah, I always used to go flying international when I was big. Every time I got pulled aside for an hour and a half in Canada one time, just going on a trip.
They could be the worst.
Yeah, and they tore my suitcase apart, all my clothes inside, and they were so furious when they didn't find anything. I wanted to be like, I'm not an idiot. I'm gonna like bring a kilo of, I don't even know, like steroids through that.
Yeah, I had that the first time I went to Australia.
No, they're crazy.
2 guys angling me.
Yeah.
And they came up to me right when I got my luggage. I said, "What do you want, guys?" "Well, do you have?" I said, "No, I don't have anything. We can go over there and you can check everything if you want. I have some protein powder and that's about it."
Yeah, that was in Canada. That's one of the things they did. I had some supplement, and it must have smelled like vinegar or something. I don't even know, but they were taking the pills out of the bottle and smelling them, and they're like, "Why does it smell like vinegar?" I'm like, I have no idea. It's not. I bought the supplement from GNC's. Take it if you want. It's just, I think that's I think that's my sleep. I think ZMA.
When I went to Norway, when I first started visiting my wife, when we started dating, they would check me every time I came into the country and just flat out ask me, "Do you have any steroids?" And I would say no. And then they would open up every single thing I had, whether it was new or already opened. They would undo my socks. They would undo everything. The best thing is they would repack it for me better than I.
Oh, nice.
There you go.
In Canada, they didn't. They just walked away. They left everything on the table, jeans inside, and just walked away. And I was like, I
had a car search like that in Canada. I wonder, and I think they pull if you have a CPL because they went through a big gun law change. And so they started grilling. I was with a guy that had a CPL and so do I. And you're like, "Do you got guns in the car? Like, you like guns?" We're like, "No, we like guns, but no, we don't have guns in the car." Like, and just pull over there, please. And just tore everything apart and just kept asking us the same questions over.
Oh, that's
over
funny.
and over.
When I was a kid, my Aunt Phyllis, I got a couple stories about my Aunt Phyllis. One, I'll tell real quick. My Aunt Phyllis drove bus. She drove the short bus. And I lived a little over a mile from school. And for whatever reason, like if you were outside of a mile, or if you were or a little less than a mile, if you were inside of a mile, they wouldn't let you had to walk to school, or they wouldn't let you go on a bus. And so, like, as a kindergartner, my mom thought that was ridiculous. I didn't want me walking to school. I'm 5 years old, almost a mile. And so she asked my Aunt Phyllis if she would just drive me home. I had no idea what a short bus was. I get on the bus the first day, not thinking anything. And the kid next to me on the aisle across from me is wearing a football helmet, and he's smashing his head against the wall. I was like, "Oh, this is weird." And then I learned what it was the next day when I get off the bus and walk out in front of everyone. And of course, I was the only kid in school who didn't know what the short bus meant. And I got ripped on I begged my mom. I was like, "I don't care if I get kidnapped. Just please let me walk to school." But anyways, my Aunt Phyllis had an exchange student, and we went to Canada for shopping, or I don't know, because we lived right across from Canada in Port Huron. And coming back, my dad is always a smart ass. He's like, "All these your kids?" And he's like, "Well, one of them isn't," or something like that. They pulled us all apart, everyone in separate interrogation rooms. I was 12 years old getting interrogated. I didn't know what was going on. It took like 4 hours. We finally, obviously, we weren't kidnapping anyone, but it was a good 4 hours. And then my Aunt Phyllis, 30 years later, still can't see my dad without bringing that up. But
Well, riding the short bus got you prepared for dealing with the bodybuilding community.
Yeah. Well, I always say bodybuilding is an interesting thing because it's not that like bodybuilders are dumb. It's that the worst thing you can do is overthink things when you're a bodybuilder. And so the only people who really are successful in the sport are the ones who don't overanalyze and overthink things, which kind of like perpetuates the stereotype. You know, like a Ronnie Coleman, you know, got like a degree in accounting, like, you know, cum laude or something.
Yeah.
But, you know, but he is that kind of guy, you know, like Brian Dobson gave him a workout program. So he just did it for 25 years. You know, Chad Nichols gave him a diet. He just did it. And
It worked.
and those are the people who succeed.
Why I never had to change my training around that much is because I knew what worked for me, and it worked all the time. So why the hell would I change it?
I was going to say this earlier when you were talking about your training, because there's something I notice over and over and over. People who are successful, powerlifting, bodybuilding, I think they're the same people who would be like Warren Buffett and be really successful in investing. Because like the problem with people, and this happened a couple of years ago, like when everyone was getting stimulus checks and the stock market was booming, everyone's like no one, like the way to make money in the stock market is just invest and let it sit for 50 years, you know?
Yeah.
But everyone's always like trying to buy and sell and buy high, or buy low, sell high. And no one ever succeeds that way. And that's the same thing with this sport. It's like, it's not flashy, but what works, works. And you just got to let time pass. And that's the hardest part, because you want it today, but you're not going to get it today. You got to do what works and do it for decades.
You have to build. It's a building process.
Mm-hmm.
And no one wants to take all the steps to build.
No. And I see it all the time, guys. Like when they sign up and I ask them to list their goals, you know, and they're 168 pounds and their goals are, I want to be 280 pounds.
Yeah.
Like that's maybe will happen, but it's not going to happen while we're together unless you're with me for 15 years.
Yeah. Their timeline is a little bit off.
Yeah. They sign up for a year, and you might want to open up a product on your website for 10 years.
I hear you on 280. 280 is great, but they all want to be one. But 280 is great, but you're 168. How about we go for 170 first? Or 180 maybe.
Of quality.
Yeah.
Well,
Bumstead, speaking of him, that that's an impressive build. That's I think that division's even more genetic than the bodybuilders now.
I watched one of his training sessions where he deadlifted, and I was like, what a beautiful deadlift. He has a great fucking deadlift.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's incredible, some of the proportions that people, to your point, in that class have, because it's, you know, it truly is, as far as the genetics and the aesthetics with that. Obviously, got to put a lot of work in too, but the differences are pretty wild.
It's an interesting look. I mean, I think it's probably going to save the sport long term. I mean, I'm still like a bodybuilding fan, but the fact that the young guys are into that, where they're not going to be weighing as much as a whole.
Yeah, it would help.
Yeah,
it'll help guys from getting too crazy.
Yeah, and because that's been a problem the last 20 years. I mean, it's definitely, you know, like everyone gets into the sport, like they call it health and fitness, but
yeah.
But that's like Frank.
I did do a video with Little Smokey when I was out in California, and I just had him walk up to me and right like that. I said, you know, people think because you're jacked or you're strong that you're healthy, and they don't realize that you're not.
Yeah, yeah. And that's the problem, because it's easy to convince yourself you are, because everyone else thinks you are. You look great and you feel great.
You feel like you're strong as fuck.
Yeah. No, yeah. That's a harsh. That's the hard thing. I feel like why I asked you about like when you left the sport, because I think that's where a lot of guys go wrong, is still clinging to it when they're older, when they're not competing, and they still want to be the big, huge jack guy, and it's just like the recipe for disaster. Yeah.
I think there's some
pitiful.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah.
You're like, you always see a guy walking around at the Arnold that's like 75 years old, jacked up and ripped on every drug in the world.
Yeah.
His body looks like it's 35, and his head looks like it's 95. It's just with dyed black hair.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
With an old like T. Michael shirt on.
yeah. Zubaz pants. You put that the dyed hair and the dyed beard too, and it's because it's so black. It's so black. It's like light doesn't just disintegrates when it hits it.
Yeah.
That's funny.
No, I was gonna say, as far as the health stuff goes, it is good to see. I don't know, last 5 years, maybe a little bit more, but like it seems like a lot on podcasts, social media, all that, people talking about, check your blood pressure, getting your blood work done, getting all these routine things, just staying on top of it. Because I know when we were coming up, like that never came up. I'd never thought of that. I was like, I'm in my 20s, my blood pressure will be fine. I'll check it in 10, 15 years. It's just, but there's also a lot of access to some scary stuff. I mean, I've in the telemedicine world, working in a clinic for a while there, seeing young guys come in who use a lot of research compounds and just trash their insides and trash their systems.
Garbage.
It's like, they thought, well, I wasn't on steroids because I used,
the reason they're not steroids is because when they were inventing them, they made the stuff that worked prescription, and the stuff that was harmful, they didn't, and that's what you're taking.
Oh God, I remember guys taking like that super draw and stuff, and putting on triple the amount of weight that they would if they did a whole bunch of regular steroids, and they looked horrible.
Yeah, and M1T, and their faces were puffy, and they get liver. I remember seeing a guy's liver enzymes this was years ago, when I think Superdraw and M1T, and maybe there's another one that were technically still legal. His AST or ALT, they were both over 500, but one of them was 700 something.
Oh my God!
And he was natural, as far as from his thought, because he bought it at GNC.
No, that's interesting. There was a guy, I did his blood work, classic physique pro, and liver and kidney markers were just out of control. And he just got done doing Superdraw, but he was also taking a lot of other compounds to help his liver and kidneys. I'm like, think of how bad it really is. Like, just, is it really worth it? Like, just play the long game. Maybe you put on 2 or 3 pounds less muscle. Maybe.
And a lot of these people are never going to amount to anything.
Right.
As far as winning anything.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, like you said, it's the long game too. That's the other problem, is there's nothing in the sport where you don't squat 1,000 pounds today, No. And so it is so when, like, all these guys that try to, and I was going to ask you about Paul Bornson, or no, you didn't say, you said Charles Poliquin, sorry. But Charles Bornson, or Paul, whatever, used to always recommend those crazy short cycles. And I was I never clicked. It never worked for me in my head, because I'm like, there's nothing. It doesn't matter if you accelerate the growth rate 5 times over normal, but only for 6 weeks. That's still nothing. It takes decades. It takes years.
A long time. I started out as a very light 165er, and I ended up at 242. And that's over 28 years.
But even that goes back to that same thing. Slow and steady, trying to make a weight class all those years, and you added almost 100 pounds of body weight, where all the guys blasting everything and force feeding themselves, never gained 100 pounds.
I went up in weight when it kind of got when I would get too lean, when I had to diet for a contest, then I didn't feel strong enough. So then I would just go up.
Mm-hmm. What did you feel your strongest at, your heaviest weight, or was there?
Probably at 220.
Yeah, 220.
Yeah.
What do you think, hypothetically, around the time you did the 901 deadlift, with a squat suit, isn't that sumo, with a whippy bar, triple ply squat suit?
Even a squat suit, was a wrestling suit.
That's what I'm saying. No, I'm saying, what kind of numbers at your peak do you think full triple ply if you trained?
Some of the deadlift bars now, I don't know, the deadlift bars now, it seemed like the more weight, like Duffin's bar, the more weight you put on the bar, the more it helps you.
Yeah.
So it would have been well over 1,000. I know that, because there's never a question on grip.
Yeah. Was your grip? Well, your hands are enormous. So.
I can still pound the basketball.
Yeah, I was like a super unique build when you see you in person, because your hands are just like man hands. It's like Michael Jordan. He's that same way. You ever see him, like, when he's talking and he waves his hand, and it's like it looks like when when giants walk in movies, and it's really slow.
Well, what Jordan said in that documentary was the strength of your hand has to do with the distance from the end of your pinky to the top of your thumb.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I got. I've got a very, very, very wide hand.
Yeah. So I got a question then. So because I have a fat hand but short fingers, I had to when I deadlifted, I had to set the bar here.
I set it there too.
Okay. Because everyone always told me to put it in your fingers, and that never worked for me.
No.
Good. Well, I'm going to tell them.
That little padded spot that.
I'm going to tell them.
But if you don't have a good enough grip to back it off, that's when it moves and it tears.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I used to do a lot of grip stuff. I used to do, one arm bar holds with 465 for 30 seconds.
Oh, wow.
Mhm.
I did power shrugs, with just a regular deadlift grip with no straps, 765 for 15 reps.
Holy crap.
Yeah, you're building up some strength there, some hand
Did
strength.
you ever do a captain's of crush at any point?
No, I had more static strength to hold shit.
Yeah.
I never practiced those.
I always wanted. I think I closed number 3 one time, but I never had grip problems either. I always felt like with an over under, like I said, when it was sitting on my, like that fat part of my bottom, the top of my palm there, it felt like I wasn't holding anything. It felt like
it was locked in.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I competed at, it was a gym in Weight Station in Michigan it was called. They had a powerlifting club, but they always taught a lot of the hook grip,
I could never get that.
A lot of weightlifters would use that. I tried it, and I used to get in some fights when I was a kid, and I busted my thumbs up, so it just hurts when I did that.
Yeah, I would find like 3 or 4 sets or whatever warming up. It was good until it got numb, and then I was like, all right, well, it hurt so damn bad that by that point I could finally lock it in.
That's when you got to fight through it to get used to it.
Yeah.
I just pussied out and said, screw that.
Same. I tried that. There was a period of time where I was just intrigued by the hook grip and I really wanted to learn it. And I remember saying, I don't care how much it hurts. I'm going to fight through it. And I cracked my thumbnail the one time. After that, I was like, this is stupid. I never had a grip problem. I don't know what benefit I'm going to get out of a hook grip other than knowing I can do a hook grip. I'll just never learn it.
Screw it.
But guys,
about to die.
What's that?
My phone is about to die.
Okay.
Well, with that,
we have something at 9:30 anyway, so that's perfect.
Good. When we're at Swiss, let's get together with like Dave and like guys that'll say anything like Wendler.
All right, I'm in. I'm in.
Well, we could like just tape it with even our phones or something, and I think it would be hilarious.
I'm in 100%. That's perfect. I'm absolutely. We'll bring cameras and everything. That'll be like that'd be like my dream. So I'm in.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing all the fun stories, and that's awesome.
The names have been changed to protect the
innocent. Yeah, there you go.
Well, thank you so much.
Thanks again.
You're
thank you guys.
Yeah, I've been a huge fan since I was a kid. So it's been really glad to have you on, and we've been pumped.
Yeah,
I had a good time.
Awesome.
All right,
thank you very much, guys.
See you at Swiss.
Thank you.
Yeah,
See ya.
Take care.
Take care.
All right.